We have seen that brands communicate information with regard to a product. In this case study, we will look at how the frozen dessert market, which has various players in it, has led to litigation and cases with regard to advertisements. And for us, the focus will be on how information that brands portray can lead to situations where the customers get enormous amount of information about the product, and also to situations which can be counterproductive for the customers, where because of an established image or an established reputation, the customers may not be fully informed when the company decides to change its product. Now, the frozen desserts case, which involves Quality Walls and Amul, is an interesting example for us to look at. Around the year 2011, this news report came up questioning whether certain products fell within the definition of an ice cream or a frozen dessert. Now, the reason why this came about was largely because of the way in which companies branded their products. Traditionally, products were branded as ice creams. Later on, some products were classified as frozen desserts. Now, there were multiple reasons for this. So, milk and milk products under the Prevention of Food Adulteration Rules 1955 states that if you have to call something as an ice cream, then the product should have not less than 10% of milk fat. So, if you don't use 10% of milk fat, then, or alternatively, if you use vegetable fat, then you have to call your product as a frozen dessert. Now, this report came in because few companies, barring Amul, Mother Dairy, Hatson, Food Agro and Hamwar, companies like Quality Walls would serve frozen desserts and not ice creams, because the way in which they branded their products, they would not be using milk fat, and they would still be selling what could be products which could be sold along with ice creams. And the article goes on to say that Haagen-Dazs and Movenpick and Baskin-Robbins offered ice creams. Now, from a health perspective, there is nothing to worry about, because vegetable fats and milk fat both can be consumed by humans. But using this incident, Baskin-Robbins had stated that it plans to introduce an emblem to convey the use of cow milk fat in its products. Now look at the use of the word emblem, which is now being used here to say that they were thinking of using a mark to communicate to their customers that they were using milk fats. And it also adds by saying that there is a difference in taste between ice creams and frozen desserts. And Baskin-Robbins goes on to state that as a policy, we will not enter the frozen dessert space, though it is cheaper to do so. And they state that the dairy fat is more than double the cost of vegetable fat. Now, there seems to be an economic angle to this way in which products are manufactured and they are branded. So there is no problem if you create ice cream and sell it as ice cream when it has milk fat. The problem arises when you have been traditionally making and manufacturing ice creams, branding your product as ice creams, and all of a sudden, for whatever reason, you choose to now not have milk fats in your product. Now, technically, you should be calling your products as frozen desserts, and you should let the customers know that. So this is a classic case where information supplied by brands can be This is a classic case where information supplied by brands, though they are telegraphic and a shorthand, they could be counterproductive for the customers when a brand establishes a reputation for a particular product. So traditionally, Quality Walls was in the ice cream business. When they moved their products to be branded as frozen desserts, still there were some customers who still thought that Quality Walls would be selling only ice creams with milk fat in it. So the price factor is further illustrated that 1 kg of vegetable fat costs 50 to 55 rupees, whereas 1 kg of milk fat is 3 or 4 times that price. Hamwar advertises its ice cream as 100% pure to increase customer awareness. So, and at around this time, its retail chain grew by 35% also, because there was the market was because the market required ice creams and it understood ice creams as products with milk fat. Now the frozen dessert market, which includes ice cream and frozen dessert, is pitched at rupees 2,500 crores, and it's growing at an average of 15% a year. With regard to the information that the customer derives, it is important to note that both ice cream and frozen dessert have a label which shows how they are described. Now the label of ice cream states that it is ice cream on top of the carton, and the ingredients include water, milk solids, sugar, etc. Whereas frozen desserts, the large font says they are creamy delights, and in the corner on the side of a box it says it's a frozen dessert. Now this is a report that has appeared recently in the papers, and the ingredient list comprises of water, sugar, milk solids, edible vegetable oil, liquid glucose, vegetable protein, and other things. So from a customer's viewpoint, when the customer sees the word cream or ice cream on a product that is frozen, the initial reaction is that it is an ordinary ice cream. But it requires the customer now to look at the fine print, look at what a frozen dessert is, and look at the ingredient list before it can actually come to a conclusion as to whether the product is an ice cream or a frozen dessert. Now this led to a legal dispute. Amul started advertising that its products contain milk fat and certain other products in the market without actually mentioning Hindustan Unilever's Quality Walls. It said that they only contain vegetable fat, and they went to the extent of saying they contain vanaspati. And they created advertisements which we would qualify them as comparative advertisements, showing the competitor's product to be something inferior or using inferior ingredients. Hindustan Unilever Limited took Amul to court. Now Amul is the brand, whereas the company's name is Gujarat Cooperative Milk Marketing Fed. In its case before the Bombay High Court, HUL stated that Amul's recently launched TV advertisement as misleading and asked for the immediate removal of the advertisement, whereas Amul had mentioned that the reason it launched the advertisement campaign was to educate the consumers to identify the difference between ice cream and frozen desserts. The advertisement talks about Amul ice creams being made of real milk as opposed to frozen desserts which were made of vegetable oil. The advertisement did not name any brand. So had they named the brand, then it would have fallen within a different category. It would have been a disparaging advertisement. Now this is still in the realm of comparative advertisement. HUL said that the advertisement makes incorrect claims on the usage of vanaspati in frozen dessert products. and quality walls mention that it does not contain vanaspati. Its products do not contain vanaspati. Whereas Amul held that frozen desserts are masquerading as ice creams, they involve low-cost ingredients, and it misleads the customers who are looking for a real product. And we are trying to make consumers aware of the difference. In response, HUL had put on its brand's website the benefits of vegetable fat as opposed to milk fat. Now, this was one of the response that HUL had, Quality Walls had, in response to Amul's comparative advertisement. HUL did not stop there. HUL countered Amul's ad with its own ad. HUL came up with a new ad stressing the use of milk in its products. HUL came up with an ad with the tagline "Quality Walls Made with Milk" and shows an animated milk bottle asking animated Quality Walls product who drank the milk. Now, this was done to show that Quality Walls frozen desserts are made with milk just like ice creams. Now, the effect of this ad campaign goes to show a function that is traditionally done by trademarks. Trademarks, when they are used, they signify information about the product. Quality Walls was traditionally an ice cream manufacturer. So when they moved from manufacturing ice creams to frozen desserts, they gave an impression that they continued to manufacture ice creams while they should have been called as frozen desserts as per the Prevention of Food Adulteration rules. Because they didn't do it, or probably they didn't do it in a way in which it should have been conspicuously done, Amul used it to its advantage to make an ad campaign and with the purpose of educating the customers. So the short point is, though brands can be a source of shorthand information, brands can also not convey information when it comes to certain products. And this is where the competition would step in, as we had seen in the case of Amul stepping in to say that we have came up with this campaign to educate the customers. So the shorthand way in which brands communicate can also be counterproductive to customers in certain cases.